Good evening and a warm welcome to Health Digest with me, Dr. Mercy Korir, where we discuss issues to do with health. And today we discuss a special category of children. These are the special needs children and what is being done about them, especially when it comes to early learning. And we know that different children have different abilities, and in this country, these children are probably taken through different ways of schooling. Some go to schools that are really special for these children, and others are integrated into their schools. And some have disabilities that hinder them from growing up like regular children. These disabilities may be physical or mental, such as varying degrees of learning disabilities. These children often require a special kind of learning to help them achieve a higher level of personal self-sufficiency and success in school and in their community that may not be available if the child were only given access to a typical classroom education. There are several institutions that offer this special education, some integrating these children with regular children. Tonight, we discuss these particular children and their inclusion and mainstreaming in school and the overall impact this has on them and the regular children. And for this discussion with me, I have Asaf Mwangi. Asaf Mwangi to my left is a special needs teacher. I also have with me Lona Mutegi, who is an academic director at Mirema School. And we'll go straight into the discussion, and I'll start with you, Asaf. What kind of special needs do we see commonly across the country?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hari. We have almost more than 13 kind of different special needs. But to start with, the most common one is what we call specific learning difficulties, which is mainly include the dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. We have also what we call speech and language disorder. Okay,
before we go to the speech learning disorder, you know, when you say dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, it may sound like really big words. Let's just break them down to our viewers. When you say dyslexia, what are we really talking about?
Dyslexia is difficulty with the written words. That's the lowest I can be able to define it. Yes, and the dysgraphia is what we call handwriting, forming letters to write a word. Dyscalculia is difficulty with numbers. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Now we can go on to the speech.
Yeah. Then we have what we call speech and language disorders or speech and language difficulties, whereby we know that a child by age of 2 years and a half, the child should be able to communicate or to express themselves verbally. Do you realize that you can get a child of that age and they have not yet acquired language? We also have what we call stammering, fluency disorders, other speech and language categories. And then we also have what we call intellectual difficulties, or what we call global learning difficulties. Initially, it used to be called mental retardation, but we have run away from those words because they are not politically correct. So we are using what we call politically correct words. Yes, and then we also have what is mainly common and what anyone in the street knows, whom we call the visual impairment. We have the hearing impairment, we have the physical impairment, and also we also have health and orthopedic impairment. We also have what we call EBD.
When do parents realize that their children probably have special needs, especially these ones like dyslexia, the learning difficulties? When do parents realize that their children have these particular problems?
Well, Dr. Hari, thank you very much for having me here this evening. Sometimes it's very difficult for you to tell whether your baby or your young child has the difficulty. And until they are able to go to school, that is when you start realizing that there might be a challenge there. Usually when children are coming to school, there are certain prerequisites they need to meet in order for us to see that they are ready to come into class. So one of the prerequisites is communication, confidence, self-esteem, able to listen and learn and take instruction. Those are some of the key areas that a child needs to have in order for them to be able to sit in a class and learn. And so once you realize that perhaps this is, a child has not been able to get to a point where they're able to do that, then as a parent, you need to start asking the question, why? because we have development milestones that ideally a regular child should follow and should be able to do. So say a 5-month-old baby should be able to gargle and, you know, start trying to create sounds with their mouth. And so when you start realizing that perhaps the milestones are delayed, then as a parent, you really now need to very quickly think about early intervention. And sometimes, you know, we hope for the best, you know, for our children and hope that they're actually going to get out of this and, you know, catch up very quickly. So you realize that sometimes the intervention comes in rather late. Because as a parent or as a caregiver or even as an educator, you are hoping that, you know, you just need to, you know, accustom the child or, you know, expose them to an all-round kind of learning. But when you realize you're not getting, you know, to where you need to, the goals that are required, especially when it comes to their learning, then you need to intervene.
That answers the question that when should parents realize that their children have some learning or their special needs children. But mine, and I think I'll ask you, Asaf, when do parents realize, as in, what do we see as happening in society as when a time when parents realize that these children are probably not a regular child?
Yeah, it's a complex question because each category of the special need manifests itself in later stages. Like if you say about walking, that one you can know by the time the child is 1 year.
1 year.
Yes. When it comes to speaking, it can be almost 1 year and a half. When you talk about reading and writing, it's only when the child is exposed to a kind of a schooling in a school setup. That's when now a parent can see there's an issue. When we talk about the attention issues, attention deficit, it's only when the child is doing a task which involves him to sustain a mental effort while doing a task, then you can really know that this child has an issue with attention. So there's no a cut-off age that we can say that you can know. But what we advocate is what we call early intervention. When you see those signs, or when you suspect that something is wrong, seek for professional help.
Before even early interventions come in, do our parents pick these issues early enough for them to seek early intervention? I'll ask you, Lorna. Do our parents really pick these things early so that they seek the right intervention at the right time?
Yeah, a certain number of parents do. But there's a lot of stigmatization when it comes around this, you know, this issue of delayed, you know, milestones, what is wrong with my child. And so what happens is for some other parents, when they realize that perhaps their child is not growing at the regular, you know, kind of stages, they're not taking on the regular stages, they then start being sidelined, or they feel that they perhaps want to hide the child away from the community. You know, I've had so many stories, and I don't want to call them crazy because I think, you know, if I use that term, it wouldn't be very fair, because maybe people don't know what to do when they find that a child is not following the norm, you know, what we expect them to. So, for example, if you have a child who has behavior that, you know, what we call the EBD, the emotion is not, you know, they're either very hyper or they're just not able to settle down. You find, you know, a lot of people advising the parent that either they should go for prayers, there's something wrong with your child, you know, or, you know, partners or, you know, couples have so many issues. This is not my child. I don't think, you know, my family has this kind of gene. So you find that it depends on what, you know, what kind of parent you are. And what we are always trying to encourage parents to do is just seek out and, you know, look out for groups, for hospitals, just like Mr. Mwangi is saying, look for professional advice. There are a lot of organizations and professionals now in Kenya, which is a wonderful thing. You know, even doctors are able to you know, determine what the problem might be. So there's really no reason for the stigma to go on with you because there's someone there to advise. However, it depends on the experience that the parent goes through with their child, and that will determine the path that they take on. So they even have denial. Parents are they deny the fact that maybe my child is not growing in the way they should. And before they can actually take the right action, it's taken it's taken a while.
So with all this stigmatization, myths, and beliefs about these children, or even some parents denying, how then do you manage such a parent and the expectations of such a child? Mr. Mwangi, do you want to have a go at this first?
Yes, I can support my colleague here. And, when we try to define the parent, we have 3 groups of the parents. There's what we call accepting parent, whom I said to deal with. And we have what we call disguising parents. Disguising parents, when they come to the professional, they act as they have accepted, but deep in themselves, they have not accepted. And then the final category is what we call rejecting parent. They have totally rejected this kind of a child. Yes, coming to your question, what we mainly do, Ed, is working very well. We work with them, because it's not easy to get a child with special need, even to us professionals. It's not easy. So we first put ourselves in their shoe. We listen to them and we understand where they're coming from. And from there, we try to connect them where they can get help. Is it counseling? Is it group therapy? Is it even support group? Is it even a parent who have been there? And then we connect them with another parent and they work together. Yes.
Is there any other different way of managing these 3 groups of parents, as Mr. Mwangi has said?
Yeah, in addition to what he said, you need to use tools that give parents the facts, as opposed to, just saying generally. Out of my experience, I may not be trained in this field, but out of 10 years of dealing with these children, you can easily tell where there's something wrong. And so there are certain tools that an institution or a school, in our case, that you have to use in order for you to give facts. When you're very general, sometimes this doesn't work very well for them. So that's the only thing that I would be able to add on. We have some amazing tools that we apply in order for us to determine what the issue is and the direction we need to take. But I think, support groups are very, very important. I just want to reiterate on that, because if none of us here has a child with special needs, you have no idea what actually goes on with a parent who is dealing with a child who is differently abled. In our school, we refer to them as differently abled. It is not easy at all. And so the only other person who would be able to understand this parent is perhaps another one who has a child who is differently abled. And so support groups, I think, are the first step that a parent should take, because they go through highs, lows, they go into very deep spaces, not knowing what to do with their child. And so, if you speak to any general person, what you don't know, you won't be able to support what you don't know or what you don't understand. So I think support groups are very, very important. Seek out other parents who may share the same challenge.
We've had this discussion with you, and also still on the parents' issue,
yes,
where parents expect their children to perform a certain way in a major exams, yet they're special needs children, and they are either tough on these children, and when they don't perform, they feel that their child has let them down. How do you manage such a parent's expectation of their child academically?
Okay, so for us at our school, this is a sore area, because it's not very, very easy to deal with a parent who may be at any of the stages that we've talked about when it comes to denial. So here you are. Let me just try and paint a picture. Here you are, you have a parent who feels that my child can actually perhaps even sit for KCPE Standard 8, because for us we are a primary school. And having worked with the child, you can tell maybe this is not the best way to go for the child. And so we put together parents' workshops, first of all, so that we are able to get them together with, parents who share common, the common challenges. But at the same time, you actually have to sit them down and show them exactly what happens in the classroom and exactly what this child is expected to do. So in the case of KCP, which is our 844 curriculum, and I'm thanking God that the Ministry of Education is actually looking at reviewing our curriculum, because now it is able to help us integrate these children with challenges. However, right now with the KCP exam, can you imagine a child with cerebral palsy who has a very strong mind? By the way, in some cases they have a very strong mind, but we're expecting them to hold a pencil and fill in the answer sheets using a HB pencil. They can hardly, their muscles are not strong enough to hold that pencil. It's probably going to be a very squiggly line, and they are expected to write an insha and a composition. Now here you are, you have a parent who actually wants that to happen. So we have to sit down and literally have one-on-one sessions with the parents and ask them exactly what are you asking for. And some parents will say, I don't care, as long as even if they give me 100 or 9, it doesn't matter out of 500. And we have to tell them it matters. What I would like to say is parents who have children with who are differently abled should be able to look at the bigger picture. Case in point, we have children who get 450, 460 in KCPE. Do you see them in the workplace with those grades? You don't, because that was primary, their basic foundation. And they proceed on to other things, to independence, and that is what the bigger picture should be for parents who are always fighting very hard for their children to sit for exams, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mwangi, same question to you. As a special needs teacher over the last 17 years, how do you manage these parents who expect their children who are special to perform like other regular children in the national exams? How do you manage these parents' expectations?
Yeah, to add on top what Rona has said, the very first thing we do an assessment. And at this assessment, we include what we call the strength of this child and what we call the area of needs. And once it's done, we don't have under expectation or over expectation. So now we have a kind of expectation which is varied. And then we sit with the parent and we see, look, this is what we have done. We have done an assessment, and this is what your child can do, and this is what your child cannot do. And if, where I teach, case from Mana School, because we don't do 844 exams. We do an Excel exam from UK, which is more available. So if a child is good in art, he will just sit for that art examination. If a child is good in IT, he or she will just sit for that exam. Yeah, if a child can only sit for 2 exams, that should be. Sometimes they cannot cope with 5 exams at a go. Yeah. And then this year the child sits for maybe 2 exams, the next year he sits for 1 exam. And we are able to make this child come out of the school with something. If a child cannot sit for any exam, any academic exam, there are some skills. Because in life, it's not about the papers. It's about what do you do with your life. There's life after school. There's a life after academic.
What Lorna was alluding to.
Yes.
After performing so well in KCP, and there's life ahead.
Yes. And we have come up with a program which is called vocational program to prepare them to exit. And this includes even hairdressing. When you go to this market, Kenyatta Market, do you ask them, did you go to university? Did you ask them that?
Nobody asks.
No one asks.
You just want a good hairdresser.
Yes, and when I pass by there, I find ladies, they have packed their cars, and they are sitting under the sun. Yes, to be plait their hairs. Yes, so these are the skills. Cooking. When you go to a hotel, you eat a good meal. You don't ask, did this one got a degree or master's?
Yes.
Just enjoy the good
Just
food.
enjoy the meal. So it's now, we should now come out and then we say, in the coming world, it's about the skills. And it's about what do you do with your life after school. It's not about the papers.
And are parents accepting of this paced sort of learning that is tailored towards their child with special needs? Do they accept once they see that it's yielding something?
For our parents who is that, you have to give them a varied, you have to give them an example. They have to see that it has worked for some parents. And this is what we do. We tell them, look here, we had this child, and this is what he did. We had this girl, this is what she did, and this is where she's working from. And we even give them the contact to talk to the parent. They see, oh, so if it has worked for this child, who is just like my daughter, then it can work for mine.
From your experience, are parents accepting of this sort of approach that is different from the expectations?
Yes, eventually they do come round and they accept. And once they accept, Dr. Mercy, that's the best thing that they have done for their child, because now we are able to set a very clear path. And believe it or not, there are clear paths for these children to take. Sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty with that, but parents are starting to accept, and there are also curriculums that are supporting that. The paced, I like the term that you've used, paced learning. That's exactly what it is. It's actually the child who determines when I'm ready to move from this stage to this stage. And so I'm also happy to say that there are curriculums that are now coming up. For example, the DEXEL, which is an IBC, the International British Curriculum for Primary Children. We have some children who are also able to do the Cambridge exam, which is also still under the British curriculum. It just depends on the severity of their challenge. We have the curriculum such as ASDAN curriculum, which is more on a vocation-based kind of curriculum that caters not only for children who are differently abled, but for what we call time takers. You know, we have children who sit in regular classes who are time takers, you see, and you cannot really say there's something wrong with this child. It's just that their mind absorbs at a very different rate. And so they're also known as, we used to call them slow learners, but now there's a new term that is, I think, more politically correct, time takers. Yes. And this is a perfectly regular child. And there are curriculums that have been, that are coming up, even with a new curriculum that is now starting off with our kindergarten and our grade 1 and 2. I am just praying that we continue with this, with the way it's going at the Ministry of Education. They are now able to cater for both regular and children who might be taking a bit more time. Okay. But parents are starting to come around, and that's amazing. That's great, yeah. Okay.
You've talked about curriculums and teaching and whatnot. So I want to find out from the two of you, what is the best practice to take these children through learning? Let me not call it classroom or academics. What is the best industry practice for these children? Mr. Mwangi.
Before I answer that, I think there's something which we have forgotten to talk about here, that this exam program from other countries like UK, it also gives a child a chance to excel in a way that if I am smart but I cannot be able to read, then I am provided by a reader. Someone will read for me the question, and I'll answer it verbally, and someone will scribe what I have said. They need to be marked. So it won't segregate me. If I cannot be able to read and I can write, then someone will read for me.
Right.
You see, and I can write. If I'm a cerebral palsy and I cannot be able to write, then they indicate that this child is a cerebral palsy. So don't mark the handwriting.
Mark what they know.
Mark what they know. Mark the content
of what is written. Absolutely. As opposed to the handwriting and how beautiful it is.
If a child has an issue with attention, they are provided by a prompter who will be telling, hey, Daktari, you are doing your exam.
You're reminded.
So there is that modification, and there is which I wish our government will be able to borrow as we go through the new curriculum.
That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, to answer your question.
We'll come back to that question. I think we want to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we'll start from that, and we'll want to know what is the best industry practice. We'll also want to know from you about integration and mainstreaming and the effect this has on other regular children and also the children with special needs. So I want us to take a break. So we'll take a break from that, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion, and we'll learn more about integration and mainstreaming and taking children with special needs through school. So we'll take a short break after, and we'll come back after this to continue with the discussion.
This is KTN News.